Whoop whoop, my friends. That's the sound of the karmic axe taking off your head. My friends have treated me well. Last night's stream was a banger. Oh, it was a banger. Go listen to Gather Scatter live, man. Because those who are not with me are against me, and those who do not gather, well, they scatter. We just gathering. We just gathering, dog. Can't stop it. Can't stop what's coming. Off with their heads. Down with the atheists. The atheist skinwalker reptilian agenda. Good to be here to give the people what they want. We had my boy Avocado in the chat last night. Hopefully you'll see this and appreciate it. Giving you what you want. Giving some really good content, good video content, good audio, good takes. Inspired me a little bit. So yes, Avocado, send me everything you got. That stuff is cool. I need the influence of an Indian. I'll send you the Discord invite so you can give me what you got. So we can have a meeting of the minds, maybe. I don't have nearly enough. I'm not employed by Indians anymore. I've lost my thread. My unbroken thread to true paganism. See where we at here. I want to make sure I can see you people. So as you whoop at me, I'm aware of you. I can acknowledge you. Okay. Okay. Let's get on with this. Off with your head! You can butcher all your emotional attachments in one fell swoop if you are willing to part with your head, which will be for you more of a cesspit of toxins than a reservoir of excellent essence, so long as it is polluted with your personal limitations. Severing your head can help you cast off your attachment to your individual, finite self. For at the moment you perform the karma of this surrender, you sacrifice a bit of your imagined control over your life. For at the moment you perform the karma of this surrender, you sacrifice a bit of your imagined control over your life and offer some of your prana to the divine. This allows divinity access into you. Sacrifice, after all, literally means to make sacred. The Maharashtrian poet saint Tukaram said it right. If we want to enjoy God, we should lop off our head from our body and hold it in our hands. When the body has been sacrificed to God, say, Tuka, all worship has been accomplished. As I talk about so often, it is the old man executing the new man. It has to happen every day, constantly. Kill that guy. Off with his head. Tukaram speaks here of dissevering one's awareness, the head, from all distortions provoked by any kind of physical, mental, or other material limitations, the body. Though the ideal head offering would extinguish all limitations at once, for most of us, a single donation will not suffice. Most of us are so attached to our self-definitions that we need to chop off and offer our heads daily internally. Oh, Vimalananda, you live inside me. Daily, internally, chop off and offer your head. The force of self-identification is called ahamkara, so long as it self-identifies with the actions of the body and mind into which it was born, a self-identification which monopolizes a great deal of energy. When ahamkara begins to release its self-identification with a limited, temporary personality, that portion of energy which is freed is called kundalini. The only difference between ahamkara and kundalini is the object with which they self-identify. Until kundalini is completely awakened, ahamkara will continue to act in large part as if it were the self, and whatever you do will continue to be motivated by your own self-importance and attachment to your sense of difference from the rest of the world. As you chop your awareness and prana free of ahamkara's grasp, you free them to identify with something new. When you act, you make use of your free will. To react is to conform to your fated karmas. If you really want to transform yourself, you will have to take charge of your reactions and learn how, when, and where to act. Free will is the ability to choose to remember that we sent our trains of karma in motion, and that we can, by dint of repeated action, eventually change the direction of that train. Your current karmas can be negated at any moment, but only if your present force of intention is equal to the force you use to create those karmas. The key to creating and solidifying new samskaras that will negate your old ones is to repeat your new actions so often and so intently that nothing can stand in their way. If anything that you do in total selfishness tends to move you in the direction of nivriti, every karma you perform with a desire for result is likely to lead you further into pravriti. There is no real advantage in renouncing participation in the world to which you belong until you are ready to give up self-identifying with your actions. Until Ahamkara has been transformed into Kundalini, you will just continue creating new Rananubandhanas wherever you go. Even the desire to make karmic amends may be fraught with peril, for fighting against your residues tends to create yet more residues, and a conscious effort to repay all your ranas may make you run amok. If you find the thought of rebirth distasteful, you will do well to learn how to act appropriately according to your dharma, in a state of karma samya, active balance, and refuse to self-identify with the performance of your duties. By reflecting on the transitory nature of existence, you can live in your family and society unfettered, like a chance guest, and forsake your attraction to the sense objects that make up your world. All bondage disappears as soon as you relinquish the idea of me and mine in all things. Realize then that smell and taste have to be given up. They are nothing but a steady flow of craving and desires. How, thus liberated, could you ever think of the fishmonger's shop as stinking? A conscious effort to repay all your ranas may make you run amok. I like that. I like that. Tyaga. All Vedic rituals contain three basic elements. Dravya, the material that is offered, Devata, the deity to whom it is offered, and Tyaga, the renunciation of the fruits of the ritual in favor of the deity. Tyaga is the essence of sacrifice. In Vimalananda's formula, the marma, core or nucleus of dharma, is Tyaga. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes Tyaga, which he defines as the renouncing of the fruits of all one's activity as life's ultimate goal. He advises Arjuna to waive his attachment to all potential results of every karma, and to focus on him and him only. Abandon all other duties, and come to me alone for refuge. Be not sorrowful, for I shall give you liberation from all sins. Sounds familiar almost, that you may pick up your cross and carry it. That you will be freed of your sins. Though there is no escape from karma in this world, you can free yourself from all other karmas by assigning the fruits of all your actions to Him. When you dedicate your actions to the Lord, they produce well-being in all fields of activity, just as watering the roots of a tree nourishes each of its branches. Your offering creates the rana that gives Him the power to help you, to grant you His grace in return. In Vimalananda's words, a fair exchange is no robbery. And in the words of my teacher, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. We got Pillman in the chat. Yo, hit me up, homie, to do wrestling content. I meant to tag you last night, and I didn't, because I'm weird and depressed and can only do like one thing a day before I just break down utterly. Yeah, I'm gonna do more wrestling content because we gotta do it at this point just to spite Brad. I don't know if you're with me on this. Fuck that guy. Daily sacrifice of your self-importance provides daily sustenance to your deity, who, after laundering it of your vasanas, returns it to you with interest. Your soul ritual becomes a quest to see and worship him in all beings, in all places, including the racetrack, if your karmas take you there, with every exertion of body, mind, and speech. Jesus would have you follow the same path. He made himself the Passover lamb, the sacrificial first fruits of the harvest, that whoever opened themselves to him might escape the burden of their karmas. Oh, my Lord. When you contract to surrender your all to Jesus or Krishna or another deity or your guru, you are in danger only if you fail to perfect your gift. A single unsurrendered karma in the causal flower bed is sufficient to seed a new forest of karmas and another string of rebirths. This hazard is easily surmounted if you are willing to extend your devotion. That commitment that Zen Buddhist abbot Harada Seki Roshi, the hazard is easily surmounted if you are willing to extend your devotion. That commitment that Zen Buddhist abbot Harada Sekiai Roshi advocates when he advises his student to crave dharma like a fish that is out of water, and work as you would if your hair were on fire. This was the sort of commitment that the gopis, the milkmaids of Vrindavan, showed to Lord Krishna. Krishna said of them, "They want me with all the force of their minds. They look on me as the life of their life. For my sake, they have abjured all the ties of the flesh, and I cherish and sustain those who sacrifice for me all the joys of this world and the next, and the dharma of which they are the fruit." In time, when the intensity and repetition of the gopis' wholehearted devotion to Krishna had completely destroyed their vasanas, they attained Krishna and freedom. Krishna similarly saved King Parikshit. How do I say that properly? Someone help me here, dude. The Srimad Bhagavata is the story of how Parikshit extricates himself from the constraints of his vasanas and samskaras. His intensity is stimulated by the curse that he would die within 7 days. The repetition is provided by the story. The first half of the book uses genealogies and lineages to awaken and release Parikshit's kundalini from its ancestral, archetypal, and transmigrational memories. The second half provides new objects for his kundalini to attach herself to, in the forms of Vishnu's avatars, divine incarnations. By Book 10, which tells the tales of Lord Krishna's transcendent pastimes, Parikshit is ready to listen and to surrender. Whoever constantly contemplates Krishna merges completely with him. But though he is perfection personified, Krishna is but one of the countless deity images to whom one can surrender. Vimalananda liked to speak of submission to Krishna when he spoke of surrender because of his love for Krishna and for the Srimad Bhagavata. Tantric sadhanas can also lead to union with one's deity, but tantric texts rarely emphasize bhakti. Vimalananda claimed that this is because, by and large, they were written by ambitious, unperfected disciples. While the texts of Tantra tend to concern themselves with karmic transactions and the achievement of results, I was so attracted to the AGHORA series. It's a series about Tantra, but when you read tantric texts, they're always very dry. Now, before I read AGHORA, and when I say dry, I mean like step 1, wait for the full moon. Step 2, suck your stomach in and out like this. Step 3, you repeat the mantras for 5 hours. And it's like, eventually you're sucking mercury into your bladder and like, from your penis, and you have no idea what's going on anymore. I lose track of what this has to do with God or spirituality at a certain level. Sometimes it seems like a terrible cope to try to escape the material binds that we are in, which is, while an admirable goal, sometimes you just gotta go with the flow, baby. You just gotta go with the flow, daddy. And that's where Bhakti comes in. So before I read AGHORA, I was reading Hare Krishna stuff by Prabhupada. I read his translation of the Bhagavad Gita. I read all of his tracts. I read it all. And that's what I really caught on to, was Bhakti. Being able to see everything you do as an act in service of God, a sacrifice to God, foregoing something that's not good for you as a sacrifice, giving that up for Him, taking in the things that are good for you, burning them inside the fire of your body as a sacrifice to Him. And then when you combine that with the tantric stuff, I think you hit a whole other level. Because then you can take in the right and the left-hand paths of these things and really see what it is in full detail. Vimalananda, who was always rebelling against something or other, loved both the Tantras and the Bhakti movement for their refusal to kowtow to petrified social conventions. While the Tantras use heterodoxy as a means to their end of extracting themselves from society's conditioning, devotees of Krishna simply have no time to think of orthodoxy. To dedicate an action to me is to purify it. What is right may in certain circumstances be wrong. What is wrong may become right. The rules that declare what is right and what is wrong thus show only that the distinction is based on no intrinsic difference. Whatever a man gives up, stupid little decisions. To Vimalananda, who yearned above all else to be free from every form of bondage, the worst sort of thraldom was entanglement in the ossified ideological pabulum of calculated spirituality. Brahmanical Hinduism has throughout its history sought to control potential troublemakers by defining them into harmlessness. I know that all too well. That is someone who feels like a constant troublemaker. Is constantly rebelling. All too often, this drive has led Indian culture to expropriate its saints. After a saint is safely dead and seemingly gone, his well-meaning devotees usurp his reputation and readjust his image and message to fit their understanding of what he was trying to teach. Most of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's disciples followed this game plan when they confiscated his memory and tailored it to suit Victorian Bengali culture, emphasizing the Vedantic aspects of his teachings while downplaying its tantrism. I think that's a sign of a great teacher, is when after they are dead, of course people will run with it to suit their own means, but you can always tell when they're really alive, when their ideology really is living in the people who believe it and follow it. Always look for that. I think Jesus is the best example of that, especially in the West, obviously. He continues to affect people constantly in a way that is just not rivaled at all in history. Vimalananda, who loved his freedom, worked hard not to be appropriated by either Neo-Puritans or Neo-Epicureans. While he sometimes actively sought to outrage, his normal daily life was usually outrage enough. I am sure that this book will give the people in the West who have already accused him of practicing black magic, beware the dark side, new ammunition with which to attack his memory. Horse races, gambling, we are shocked. But what else should we expect from those prigs and blue noses, who are after all simply reacting, conforming to their karmas? What can someone who is bedeviled by concern for external purity and piety understand of someone to whom the external is merely a detail? He who lies down on the ground cannot fall, says the Srimad Bhagavata. and there is no ground further down than that of the smashan. Every act that Vimalananda performed was a calculated excuse, a ploy to maneuver himself into a position from which he could square up some Renanu Bandhana or other. Inspired perhaps by the example of Lord Krishna, who certain bhakti texts describe as a sweet thug, because he would dupe people into doing what their karmic debts required them to do. Vimalananda never failed to stoop to crookery when he required it to take care of a rana. He thus fit right in at the racecourse, where everyone is crafty. You cannot speak your mind candidly to all and sundry at the racecourse and hope to win any races. This makes you crooked. But it need not make you a cheat. Life at the races is an apt allegory for life in general. On the track or in the home or office, the best way to deal with the karmic reactions that have come due is by kala, stratagem, finesse, and not bala, brute force. Never try to force the issue, but negotiate patiently as you slip and slide your way toward extraction. Vimalananda, who characteristically preferred tact to coercion, as he navigated the ship of his life through the sea of his world, illustrated this point on one occasion with the following story. There was once a man who owned an old pair of sandals, which had been patched so many times they had no spot left unpatched. The man then decided that it was time to get rid of these sandals, so the next time he went to the temple for worship, he removed them and left them outside. When he came out, he deliberately neglected to pick them up, thinking that some poor person would come along and take them. But some busybody ran after him, handed them to him, and said, "You've forgotten your sandals. Don't you have any better sense?" The man walked back home, where he concluded that the best way to get rid of the sandals was simply to throw them away and let anyone pick them up. So he went directly to his window and threw them out. But they happened to land on a small child who was passing at the moment beneath his window. The child and its mother screamed so loudly that a crowd gathered. When they heard what had happened, the crowd abused the man for injuring such a dear, helpless child. And the child's mother beat the man soundly with his own sandals. Once the commotion had died down, the man sat to think the situation over. He reflected to himself, "All I wanted to do was to get rid of these old sandals, and as a result, I'd get both insults and a good beating. What can I do now?" Suddenly the sandals started to talk. They said, "Why are you causing such a fuss? All right, I know that I have been resold so many times that nothing but patches remain. But all you have to do is remove all the patches and attach some good leather, and then attach a new sole, and I'll be just as good as new." And that is what the man did. Reminding me of, the paradox of like the axe, where it's the handle and the head. You replace the handle, and you got the old head on there. It's the same axe, right? And you replace the head, and none of it is the same axe. Yet, to your understanding, that is the same axe you've been using. So, I mean, it goes to show, right, that like we are not our bodies. We always come back, right? Is that what I'm seeing here? That we have to atone for the karmas. We'll be back. Good as new. A world of stories. Vimalananda, who patched and resold his personality whenever he wished to become good as new, made his whole life into a teaching tale. Rarely would he hesitate to hyperbolize to drive a point home. He did, after all, sometimes describe himself as Bandal-i Aftab, the sun among exaggerators. His overstated displeasure with figures like Adi Shankaracharya and Mahatma Gandhi does not imply a lack of appreciation for their real achievements. It suggests instead an acute awareness of their imperfections, enhanced that I might not mistake the lessons they carried. He sometimes exceeded his own limits for similar purposes, and as you read his excuses for such questionable behavior, remember the many ways in which we each use self-justification to our own advantage. The human brain has been compared to an attorney who will argue whatever side of a case it has been hired to argue, regardless of its merits. Once Vimalananda had divined a course of action, it was child's play for him to construct a rationale for it. So, it's not just that, when we get old, we get thrown away, we come back with a new body. It's not quite that simple. It is that we construct a new personality, a new mask, a new body every single day, a new mind every single day to achieve our will. So it's a matter of what is your will. Though he never succeeded in winning me over to certain of his more outlandish positions, I was always at least willing to consider being convinced by Vimalananda's arguments. Doing so facilitated free communication in the same way that rambunctiousness on my part would have obstructed it. And most of the time, Vimalananda's conclusions were themselves self-evident to me. But perhaps the main reason that I would sometimes accept the possibility of truth in an assertion so wild that coming from anyone else I would have instantly discounted it was his transparent sincerity. In AGHORA, lack of heart is very dangerous, and Vimalananda was a child at heart until his dying day. His love for everyone around him was so genuine and childlike that many people took mean advantage of him, which eventually made him wary enough of humans that a certain external trickiness came to seem to him prudent. What seems to me prudent is to accept his stories for what they are and allow the heart to extract from them their vital essence. A good tale is such a useful tool because even if it suggests nothing to you when you first hear it, it can mature within your consciousness into a form that in due time may begin to communicate with you. Like many other teachers of traditional Indian wisdom, Vimalananda preferred to teach in stories, some of which speak to the deepest levels of human awareness. There were times when Vimalananda would be trying to explain to me something exceptionally esoteric, like the relationship between the causal body, the chromosome pattern, and the Jnanendraya Karmendraya Nyaya. Let's just call that the law of the sense organs of cognition and those of action. Let's call it that. And how the law of the sense organs of... Come on, man. Killing me. So it is Jnanendraya Karmendraya Nyaya, the law of the sense organs of cognition and those of action, and how the Jnanendraya Karmendraya Nyaya controls fertilization and impregnation, that everything would begin to go far over my head. Man, that's how I feel right now, way over my head. What the heck am I reading? Trying to explain to me something exceptionally esoteric, like the relationship between the causal body and the chromosome pattern, and the law of the sense organs of cognition and those of action. So this, it sounds, now he was literally talking about like impregnation, fertility, and all of that stuff. So this is like the conscious inception of a soul? It sounds pretty complicated. Using the chromosomes via yoga? I don't know. Then he would suddenly shift his discourse into a story instead. Though at the time he delivered it, the story often seemed to have little connection with the topic at hand. The truth of their connectedness would indeed gradually begin to arise within me as it all sank in. Even with time, of course, some myth-packed narratives never reveal themselves fully, even when they seem most nailed down. When you read in Chapter 1 of the story of Prithviraj Chauhan, for instance, Prithviraj Chauhan, please remember that there was a time when it was common practice in India, at the start of a construction project, to drive a nail or stake into the head of Sheshanaga, the gargantuan serpent who supports the world. The structure's cornerstone would be laid above the snake's head, thus placing it at the exact center of the world. Mircea Eliade has traced this tradition to the primordial gesture of Indra when he struck the snake in his lair, when his lightning bolt cut off its head. To transfix or behead the snake is to pass from the virtual and amorphous to the formed and organized, to concretize a potential karma's causation stream in time and space. Properly fastened karmas churn out well-tempered, benefic effects. Shesha means in Sanskrit that which remains, not in the sense of someone's leavings, but rather a background or setting, a matrix which so complements an item that without it, that item would be incomplete. That which remains, not in the sense of someone's leavings, but rather a background or setting, a matrix, which so complements an item that without it, that item would be incomplete. When you dig a well on your property, you may value the well for its water, but the condition of the ground that forms the remainder of your property will govern how valuable that well will be to you. Your well draws its water from your property's shesha. Change those surroundings and you change the well. Like a wisely dug well, a story whose stake stretches down into the Shesha Naga's head taps into its own Shesha, the inexhaustible waters of living myth which will continue to stream into it, so long as that stake remains in place. Vimalananda rarely met a story he didn't like, and he freely adapted many of them for his purposes. In this, he was but following tradition, for recycling legend is an ancient and respected practice in India. In Vimalananda's world, no story was a good one, unless it possessed at least 7 layers of meaning, as he would tinker with his stories until they did. You can, if you like, compare Vimalananda's version of the story of Sudama with that of the Srimad Bhagavata, Book 10, chapters 80 and 81, and find in the Sanskrit text, known as the Pancha Tantra versions, of at least 2 tales that Vimalananda ascribed to Akbar Birbal, that of the unlucky one-eyed washerman and that of the man who claims to be able to go to heaven by getting his old body burned. Vimalananda, who had done an M.A. in Mughal history, was particularly fond of tales of Akbar and Birbal, many of which continue to be told for fun and profit all over North India. He added some of the better known of these to his repertoire and possessed others that seemed to be known only to him. These may have been gleaned from some obscure oral tradition, or he may have deliberately created them as teaching tools. If so, he would not have been the first to do so. This book, which I crafted with the same sort of heedfulness that we use to craft our winners at the track, is an episode in the personal saga of the AGHORA Vimalananda. This introduction represents a slice of the book's Shesha. As you turn now into the narrative, please release any need you might have to perfectly understand the literal meanings of its words and sometimes eccentric reasoning. Open yourself, rather, to the words. Let them course through you in their own way, and they will surely deliver to you their message. Note: aside from known historical figures like Akbar, General Sleeman, and Seth Sagal Shah, and known mythological figures like Smashantara and Goraknath, the following actual people appear within under their own names. Robbie, the author, who is Robert Svoboda, the author of AGHORA 3, Kundalini. Did I announce that in the beginning? I probably didn't. I'm pretty lazy about doing stuff like that. You know what you're listening to. You read, because that's the thing, you were with me. You were there for it. We read like 24 hours of this. I'm hoping if you're listening to this, you've been listening. Roshni, Ranu, Faram, Chotu, Vaidya, BP Nanal, Dr. Vasant Lad, Dr. Shantilal Mehta, Dr. Gomes. It goes on like this. These are the people who are included under their own names. Cool. We got a dog named Lizu. The dog's registered name was Lady Elizabeth. Her registered name was Lady Elizabeth. So remember, when I say Lizu, I mean Lady Elizabeth the dog. Professor Joker, the guru. That sounds good. Black Dog really is a blend of premium scotch and Kersasp Cola. I don't know what that is. It produces a savory, spicy carrot pickle. The horses... What? There's a horse named Patu. There's a bunch of O's. The horses Patu, Waxy, Eclipse, Kinsem, and Mount Everest actually raced under those monikers. Everyone else, horse and human alike, has had his or her name changed to protect the innocent, the guilty, and those who aren't sure. Stoney's photo on Vimalananda's wall showed her winning a race other than the Mother Lode Cup. Although Colonel Pratap Singh of Jodhpur was a real person, the big race that Redstone won was named for another nobleman. Every event in which I am involved that I recount in this book actually occurred, insofar as things actually occur here in the physical universe. Here we are at chapter 1. That was only the introduction. What are we, three episodes in, and that was only the introduction. Now, I think I'm going to stop here. That might be a bummer. This might be a little bit of a short recording, but I will be back because I've been shown support from the people that I love, and I see God in them, knowing that they are just mirrors of myself, and we are one. I will be back soon with more. I thank each and every one of you. You know where to support me if you want to do it. God bless.